Hey, coming up on the show today, breaking news, a giant in the TTRPG industry retires. And in heavy news, we're discussing about how the gargantuan tariffs will affect tabletop games. Also, a new movie release has a little beacon of hope. Then a new old school actual play podcast and new fiction from a classic D&D author. On our creator corner, we're going to kick around some ideas how to make your NPCs better. And coming up later on our roundtable discussion, using humor in your games. This is Casual Friday, where we talk about tater pigs. I'm Jim, that's Ryan and Brad, and we'll be right back after that.
Are you ready to get casual? Grab your favorite adult beverage or combustible plant and join us for our roundtable TTRPG discussion. Oh yeah, it's time for Casual Friday. And now, here are your hosts.
And we're back, just as promised. Hey everybody, how we doing? This is Casual Friday, where we talk about news and goings on and shenanigans and chicanery in the tabletop role-playing game industry. And so the first thing that we need to talk about was breaking news literally about 2 hours ago. Christopher Perkins of Dungeons and Dragons Wizards of the Coast has retired. He just posted this. He said, "Today I retire from Wizards of the Coast after 28 years. With D&D's 50th anniversary wrapping up and the revised rulebooks doing gangbusters, this is the perfect fairy tale ending for me. I can't wait to enjoy D&D purely as a fan again, knowing the game is in good hands. See you in the Feywild." Now, unless this is some kind of belated April Fool's joke, this is real breaking. Wizards of the Coast is now officially retiring. So, what do you think about this? It's, what prompted this, and what's next for Mr. Perkins?
I
Well, the next time I resign or retire or move on from anything, I hope I have the opportunity to include a Ralph Wiggum gif. That is class right there.
I was wondering if Ralph was like just a little bit of shade at Wizards. I don't know.
Oh,
Feeling
how
it.
so?
I'm feeling it. Well, I mean, I don't know. To me, that gif kind of says like he's not real happy about retiring. I don't know if I'm projecting my feelings about Wizards on that, or I don't know.
For such a
Hmm.
simple character, Ralph Wiggum has a lot of nuance and subtlety. And, like, I agree that there could be layers of meaning in that inclusion of, like, yay. Because, like, it's definitely some inappropriate moment in The Simpsons that they cut to Ralph Wiggum waving a sparkler. Guaranteed, it's been a long time. I'm no longer fluent in Simpsons because haven't been using it as much lately. But in the parlance of The Simpsons, I am sure that there is a little edge of a joke there. But I mean, my man was there 30 years.
Yeah.
30 years? I did not realize. I mean, I knew he had a long and storied tenure, but I didn't realize it stretched back that far. He wasn't driving the bus for all 30 years, but man, what a ride. Like, say what you will about WotC and Hasbro. I, for one, am always careful to try to draw the distinction between the people trying to make the game cool and doing cool, creative things and the corporate structure that changes every quarter or two and is just trying to maximize profit. Those are two different things. Chris Perkins is retiring from WotC. Nacho. Just announced. Breaking news. Something happened on a Friday, everybody.
Yeah, something finally happened on a Friday. If he was there 28 years, that takes us all the way back to 1997. That was pre D&D acquisition, right? So he must have started on MTG cards. That acquisition was
Oh,
99, I believe.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I always forget that, like, yeah, he could have been with Magic. Yeah,
Yeah,
good
but
point.
but he also wrote D&D adventures for Dragon magazine back in the day too, right? So
Hmm.
I mean, so he was making D&D content before he worked at Wizards, as far as I'm remembering. So like during the TSR days, he was submitting content to Dragon magazine, if I'm remembering that right. So he's been doing D&D stuff long before he actually worked at Wizards. So yeah, he transcends multiple versions of the game.
He was a long time dungeon master for Penny Arcade for their Acquisitions Incorporated podcast. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him do something with them in the future, maybe. Also, if you might remember, he had a very memorable guest spot as a guest spot in Critical Role. I think it was campaign 1 or maybe early campaign 2. He played a kobold. He was on screen for about 30 seconds. Then he was killed in a fireball and he left the stage.
I will say that was the best guest spot in Critical Role. It's in season 2, and it's incredible. It informed some of my renditions of Meepo in the future. Splat, something like that. Incredible. Just
Yeah.
all-time great performance.
To answer Mike's question from the chat, I'm not exactly sure what all he was involved in during third edition, but he was around WotC during the third edition years. One of my like earliest memories of him was previewing the fourth edition virtual tabletop. Like you can if you search it online, you can find a video of like a young Chris Perkins, and he's standing on stage, sounding very nervous to be in front of that many people, pitching the new fourth edition D&D virtual tabletop before we called those things virtual tabletops. And it's funny to go back and watch that video and compare it to things they were saying about Sigil over the last 2 years. And it's like, it's the irony is rich when you go back and watch that young Chris Perkins.
WotC's history with virtual tabletops is not great. This one failed for a completely different reason than the last one failed, though.
Oh yeah,
There's not a murder-suicide involved in this one, as far as we know yet. It may come out there was a murder-suicide involved in the failure of this VTT as well as the last one, but don't.
Definitely hope that's not the case.
Yeah, you guys know that
Nothing
story
would surprise me now, but
about the engineer at WotC?
Yeah, from the fourth edition engineer. Yeah. That's a tragic story.
Well, so Chris Perkins is retiring. You heard it here possibly first. You're going to be hearing it on every single one of your favorite YouTuber channels in the next 3 to 4 days. Get familiar, get used to those Chris Perkins bald head thumbnails.
Or black
on
hat.
YouTube. Yeah, or the black hat look. So we don't have any further information than this. We don't know if JC is now head of D&D. We don't know if they're going to bring in some people. We don't know if Perkins is going to go work for MCDM or Darrington Press. We don't know anything. We don't know. Maybe he's secretly joining Mike Merle's Patreon to make that new anti-D&D TTRPG with Merle's maybe. And Merle's just couldn't talk about it until now.
That would be a juggernaut, right? If Chris Perkins went over there to work with Mike Merles and they made their own game, that would be something. But what he says in his post here is that he's looking forward to playing D&D just for fun. So maybe he's just retiring. Maybe he just wants to relax and enjoy, not having a job.
I can never tell. I've never been able to tell how old Christopher Perkins is. He has, very few wrinkles. But if he's been Wizards of the Coast 30 years, he's at least got to be in his 50s. So I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he won a bunch of money at the track, and that's what really inspired all this. Is that he scored big. On a 1,000-to-1 horse at the track, and this, he's just gonna be sailing boats in Florida from here on out. Who knows?
Now
2
we're
weeks
spreading
ago,
rumors.
A few weeks ago, he looked at his 401k and he's like, finally, I am ready to retire. And he put in his notice. And here, perfect timing, sir. You know how, speaking from experience, limited as it may be, sometimes a dungeon master gets the opportunity to take a back seat, play for a while, and it's just like, yeah, I'm happy to just enjoy D&D as a player. And then we get the itch. I would not be surprised if this is not the last we see of Mr. Christopher Perkins. Perhaps after some sort of NDA expires, we might have a model in Mike Merle's of the sort of behavior we could expect here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That would be interesting. 57, by the way. I looked it up.
Oh, 57. Okay.
So
he doesn't look a day over 43.
No, he's older than me, but I think I look older than him.
Maybe you need to shave your head, Brad, in the stash.
Just
Maybe you need to go hairless. Maybe that's the key to unlocking your youth. Well, we have a very jam-packed show today, so we should probably move on to the next thing. And the next thing is a real big bummer that we have to talk about. Unfortunately, we very much, at least I, very much do not like to talk about politics on this show, I think, but we are all generally agreed that we are loath to talk about politics, as that's not the focus. We are here to talk about the tater pigs. But we do need to talk, unfortunately, about tariffs. Not specifically about politics, but things as a result of political moves. Now, there are tariffs on, the United States is putting tariffs on everybody. It was like 180 something countries. And this
Some
post,
of which are unoccupied.
yeah, I saw that as well. Yeah, tariffs on unoccupied islands. Well, this post on Steve Jackson Games talks about the effects of the tariffs on the board game industry. He talks about some people ask why not manufacture in the U.S. I wish we could. And this is the full-scale board game production. This is what I was looking for: dice making, die cutting, custom plastic and wood components. A lot of these companies come from overseas, come from China. And this question of why not manufacture in the U.S., well, if they could have, they probably already would have been doing it. If they could have gotten it for the same price or for a reasonable price, I'm sure they would have been doing it. But this is one of the reasons why Hasbro stock is tanked, because Hasbro is funded on plastic from China. You know, Hasbro runs on plastic from China, which is about to get 54% more expensive. And Stephen Glicker made a video about this today, where he goes through beginning to end about the process, and he told a very harrowing story in his video where he talks about they unload your crap from the ship onto the dock, and then they say pay the tariff right now or we destroy your stuff. And that's how it goes. You either pay the exorbitant fees or they literally destroy your wares right there on the dock, and you get nothing.
Yeah, they're not going to store it for you. You've got to pay the tariff to get it out of their way.
Yeah. So, personally, like as an author, I'm pretty fortunate that I work in mostly a digital business. I do have print books for sale, but they're print on demand through Amazon mostly, so they come locally from the United States, and there's a shipping center in Europe and Australia, so I'm not too terribly affected by this personally. But do you guys are you affected by it personally, or do you have any thoughts on the tariffs or how we can weather this storm that's going to make everything 50% more expensive?
Yeah, I would strongly encourage folks to watch Roll for Combat's video. Steven can sometimes be a little bit sensational, but in this video, like he seems very straightforward, very to the point. I was really impressed with that video, and his recommendation makes a lot of sense, where he says, you know, one of the best things you can do to support the hobby right now is to buy your games directly from the person that makes it. Right? If you're buying Shadow Dark stuff, buy it directly from Arcane Library. If you want Roll for Combat stuff, buy it directly from Roll for Combat, so forth and so on. Because that gives the largest percentage of profit to the game designers, the game publishers, right? And he said you can still support your local game store by going into the store, buying food at the store, because they have a much larger markup on food than they do on games, right? Hanging out in the store and spending money on, you know, the knickknacks and those things that are not specifically game related, because again, they're going to have a much better markup on those things. So I thought that was good advice on how to directly support the hobby with your spending.
Yeah, Nacho, is New Zealand doing retaliatory tariffs? That would, if they are, then yeah, getting products in New Zealand is going to get very expensive. I don't know about that.
It's it's difficult to tug on all the strings that this impacts because okay, it's on games, but not books, or at least 52% is on games. Books are only 7%, which is the Boston Tea Party was about 1.5% for historical reference here. Um, Books are 7%. Oh, I mean, my book is print on demand, comes out of America. I personally am not going to, the verdigris table is not going to be hit by tariffs immediately. If I had 1,000 copies of these on the way from China, which I would have ordered months ago, I would have found out yesterday that I'm getting a bill for 54% of the value of this, and that would have shut me down. Like I could not have absorbed that sort of cost. Um,
Well,
if
and oh, and to that point, Indestructible Boy, he did his Vagabond Kickstarter, and then and this was before the big tariffs from this week, right? The he had to do a second Kickstarter to cover costs, tariff costs,
and that's when
right?
it was 10 points, and now it's 54 points. It's
Right.
nuts.
Yeah.
And okay, so my book is going to get printed here, so I'm not going to pay the tariff, but that tariff's going to trickle down to the cost of the paper that they're using. I don't know what the number is on the paper, on the ink, on whatever on the mechanical side they're maintaining those machines with, because I guarantee some link in that chain is part of the international free trade that we have established over the last, I don't know, my entire lifetime. So it's going to hit everything. A lot of folks in chat, and one of my first ideas was like, I like PDFs. All right, digital isn't impacted by this, but like if you're buying a PDF from a company who is making some portion of their revenue off of book sales and that has just evaporated before we even factor in maybe they just got a bill for an insane amount of money that they weren't expecting because this happened overnight with no notice. I mean, we knew it was coming, but not like this. The price of your PDF is going to go up. You're everything is going to go up. Everything is going to go up 50%, 100%. That's before we talk about the value of the dollar changing because of this. Like it's going to make an impact wherever in the chain you are. I do think prognosticating big picture, like it's a relatively cheap hobby at the end of the day. Steam Deck also going up 60, 70%. So your $400 thing is now a $750 thing.
Yeah, they
Like
just
everything
announced.
is doing this.
Sorry, they just announced the Switch 2 this week, and the price it's priced at 450, and some people were saying that includes about $150 tariff buffer to make sure that no matter what the tariff is, they're still going to make some margins on their hardware. And then Switch to their primary game, the new Mario Kart, is $80. So
I,
they already have tariff pricing like built in.
but that's pricing in like a 15-point increase, not a 55-point increase. You're talking
Yeah.
about a $120 game cartridge, right? So like your $30, $40 PDF doesn't look so bad. And I'm going to get more hours of fun out of that with my friends. But that's just me, man. And like, I don't know. One of the verdigris table's main costs is coffee. This is the raw material that fuels the ideas, guys. And like, I, America doesn't produce a lot of it. I drink most of the percentage that's coming from Hawaii myself. Like, we need it. It's going to get
And
weird.
I'm sure companies would love to use this as an excuse to shift toward digital, but we all know there's snares there too when it comes to right stuff, file access, rights being revoked. That's why we like holding the paper books in our hands because they can't take them away. They can't revoke our access to these books behind me. Nobody can revoke my access unless my house burns down, but that's separate. You
Or the
know,
Pinkertons.
Pinkertons can come take them away. I guess they could. I don't really have receipts for every single one of those, so If somebody knocks on my door, we could be in trouble.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's crazy. Like I would not want to be, in a position where like Indestructible Boy was, right? Or like Roll for Combat is, where they've got products that are already been produced in China and are have been produced elsewhere, and they have to get them here now and pay now. Like it's crazy. You I've had like similar feelings when like similar scares. My wife and I have a business, and you have to pay payroll taxes, right? And you have a payroll company that manages all that for you. Once you get like so many employees, you don't want to try to tackle that yourself. And we've had situations where the payroll company screws up the payroll taxes, and then the IRS is like, "We're gonna freeze your accounts until you deal with this." And like that's that kind of scare of, oh shit, I have to drop everything right now and figure out how to pay this huge chunk of money to resolve this problem that I'm not responsible. I didn't create this problem, but now I'm on the hook to deal with it, or I'm not going to be able to run my business. Like that would suck, to be in that situation where you've got product on the dock, and now all of a sudden it costs, you know, 8 times more than what you were expecting to pay for it. And you got to either come up with that money or you're SOL. That's
we're not
very
talking
easy.
about like we're not talking about huge margins in this industry. At least when we're talking about like independent creators here. Like people are going out on a limb to make these things happen. And you think about all these like add-ons. Like I have a project coming up. I'm not ready to talk about it, but like I've got a few people in my ear being like, "Oh, you should make dice. Oh, you should make minis. Oh, you should make all this." Like, oh, like diversify. I'm going to do more, bring more value to people, and like, woo! If I was in the middle of that right now, I'd be turning off the lights. Like, it would be bad. It's gonna be interesting. Support the people you care about right now. Every dollar is a vote. Every dollar is a vote. They may become more precious now for everybody. I'm very respectful for that. People are in different positions, but think about who you want to support.
you know,
I think too, maybe maybe put a button on this. We can maybe just hope that this goes away, that the powers that be realize this was a terrible decision, and this all just gets aborted on Monday. So let's hope that. But let's move on to more positive things. And the next thing we're going to talk about is a little birdie told me that there is now officially a release date for the Legend of Zelda movie. From what I hear, it's a direct sequel to the 1980s cartoon. No, I'm just kidding.
You had me for a second there. I was like,
what?
Same canon. It's a direct sequel to the cliffhanger from the final episode. We all remember, of course, the final episode of the 1980s. I think, didn't they do like a 15-minute Zelda and a 15-minute Mario cartoon in a block? I don't remember. But anyway, the reason why I felt like this was noteworthy is that, at least for me personally, I don't think anything has prompted me to dive into fantasy more than The Legend of Zelda, more so than the Arthurian legends or Tolkien's works or Conan the Barbarian or any of that. That to me, the guy with a sword will always be Link, and a guy with a sword collecting gear, fighting monsters, and collecting keys to unlock gates across an open world. That comes from The Legend of Zelda, and it's always been a huge influence on my love of fantasy and guy with a sword fighting monsters. And what do you guys think? Any thoughts on the Legend of Zelda movie coming out in 2 years?
I'm with Nacho on this one. I was a Sega kid growing up, so I never played a Zelda game, believe it or not. So I do not have that nostalgia. But I'm all for more fantasy content. Like if you can make a good fantasy movie, I'm gonna watch it. That's my jam, right? I love fantasy fiction.
Ryan, tell me you've played Zelda.
Yeah, I'm a Nintendo boy. It was Christmas, 1989, and I opened Mario 3, and my life was never the same. Uh, yeah, Zelda is iconic, which is why I have very mixed feelings about this. I am cautiously optimistic and prepared to be disappointed, as with most things. I feel like that this push towards live action in a realm where like animation might serve better. I don't understand. It seems to be there's a push to make these like live action films. Maybe because of the Lord of the Rings legacy, if I had to guess, but that's quite old now. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm hopeful. Zelda's awesome. Because I think for me too, like I don't know if it was my first introduction to fantasy, but it was my deepest entry into fantasy where it's like I was the guy going around. I was in charge, I was in control, I was figuring it out. And I do like just the central metaphor of Link is that somebody else has the wisdom, somebody else has the power. You've got courage and a boomerang, nothing else to start. And you just venture into this like mysterious fantasy world and you know in my day, video games were hard. You would take some hard knocks and learn how to play. And yeah, it's just I heart Link.
Yeah, I definitely get that fantasy trope. Like that is probably one of my favorite fantasy tropes, which is why I like playing fighters and rogues in D&D so much when I do get a chance to play. It's because I love just being the guy. Like just a guy in a world with all this weird shit going on and magic, and you're just a dude with a sword in your hand trying to, survive this bizarro world. Like that's a fantasy trope that I love.
Same, man. I think a lot of new players especially go to make the coolest, most badass, essentially like a BBEG half the time. And like, oh, there's such value and just like, I'm just a dude. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm sure curious. Like, I get to explore this world at the cost of not being the most badass guy in the room. Like, cool. All right. I'm going to find the most badass guy in the room, learn everything about him, and steal his stuff.
Nacho, they're gonna make it with the Sonic extended universe with what is it, Altered Beast, and those are all the Sega games I remember.
Golden Axe and Altered Beast.
I was super well behaved when the politics conversation was going on, so I'm going to say Nintendo is better. Screw all you Sega kids. Come at me in the comments. Let's mind some controversy.
Yeah, obviously Nintendo was way better. I will say this though, Breath of the Wild was such an amazing, beautiful video game experience. They're remaking it in like full 4K for the new Switch. If you hadn't played it, I mean, I rarely think video games are art. I think some of them are. I think there's a very, very small percentage, and this is one that Breath of the Wild, I would consider it art and some like a must play piece of art you have to experience. It was absolutely beautiful. Anyway, so moving on, still on games, but a different kind of game. We are going to. Who here has heard of Shut Up and Sit Down? This is the day where Brad doesn't know anything.
We got him.
Shut Up and Sit Down is a YouTube channel about board games that have been very popular for quite a long time. And a guy from Shut Up and Sit Down named Quentin, or he goes by Quins. He branched off about a year ago to his own separate TTRPG channel called Quinn's Quest. And he is...
Time out. Okay, Brad, you know Quinn's Quest?
I do know Quinn's Quest.
Okay.
Phenomenal.
Great.
So good. Okay, that guy.
Brad, when you hear something you know, just hold up one finger, okay?
Back in my day, I don't know what you kids are talking about.
Well, anyway, Quinn's from Quinn's Quest has just launched a new podcast that's called Play to Find Out. And it's an actual play podcast, but the hook is they only play very old games. They only play games from the 80s and 90s, and right now they're playing. It's the something of Jorune, Sky Realms of Jorune, and it's just him and two of his friends. And it just came out a couple days ago. I haven't listened to the full episode yet, but it's interesting because they're discussing the mechanics of this system. Like his two players show up. They've never heard of this game. He gives them character sheets and he's talking them through the rules during this episode, and it's really interesting. So if you like the idea of actual play, but you don't want to watch Critical Role or anything else playing 5e, this might be a really interesting alternative to learn about new systems.
And by new,
Any
you mean
thoughts?
old and janky.
Yeah, I mean, there's value in going back over some of those old games, even though they janky is being generous. Some of them are there's an absolute mess. Some of those old TTRPGs we played when we were kids, but there's value in going back over those games and the old mechanics and seeing, what we've learned since then, right? And design decisions that were made back then because you thought you needed like a certain amount of realism in a TTRPG, or you needed, to do something different than what D&D was doing. And there's a lot of weirdness in some of those old role-playing games, like Shadowrun, for example. But yeah, you can learn a lot though by tinkering around with those old systems and their kind of archaic rule sets.
That's funny that Matt Colville addressed that in his Forever DM video from last week, where he talked about playing old janky systems from the 80s and 90s, and he said the rules were bad. Looking back, the rules were bad. We knew at the time the rules were bad, and we didn't care. We had a lot of fun anyway. And so I think that's the alchemy. If you can bottle that, like whether the rules are good or bad, how do you find the fun in there? And like speaking of Nintendo, that's one thing I think they do really well is they've never had the most technically advanced systems. They've always lagged behind Xbox and PlayStation, but their systems sell well because Nintendo knows how to make something fun.
Mm-hmm.
They really know how to find the fun of the thing. The fun of the thing isn't that this game is in 4K instead of 1080. That going 4K to 1080 to 4K doesn't make something more fun. But
Right.
the Joy-Cons are fun because you can do stuff with them, right? I don't know how I got on that tangent there. Anyway, please somebody else talk.
But that connects back to our conversation about Mike Merles when he was talking about new players want the essence of the thing, right? And
Right.
to your point, that's what Nintendo does well. Is they will take a game and boil it down to the essence. So this game feels a certain kind of way when you play it. Right? It's not just this is solid design or this is good mechanics. It's the design and the mechanics come together to create a certain feeling that you get when you play the game. And I think that's why like there are so many just diehard Nintendo fans, right? Is they get that and they enjoy the hell out of the fun that comes from the game. There's a certain type of gamer that eats that up. And I think those are your Nintendo fans.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take a lot of lessons from Nintendo if you're running a gaming company, if anyone from past roles, but also if you are running a game, if you are world building, go play one of those old Mario games. Go play one of those old Zelda games and just see how a few details back in the days when they were just like polygons are creating this atmosphere in a super evocative way. And there is value, as Brad was saying, revisiting old janky things, finding out what you don't like, what's broken about something, will teach you how to fix it in a way that a perfectly smooth experience that you never examine won't. And also, it's just fun, right? That's the point. Oh, cool. It's you're cruising along at 120 FPS. Awesome. Is it good? Is it fun? Are you enjoying yourself? No? Oh, cool. But you spent $2,000 on a video card to make it happen faster? Cool. Great. I guess we like different things. But the joy of watching a bad movie and ripping it apart as you do. is if you're sharing it with, it's something you maybe don't want to do in a room by yourself. But that old Mystery Science Theater 3K version of sitting around watching something bad, making jokes about it, enjoying it, there's a certain magic to that.
Yeah, well, and there's also, like you were saying, a lot you can learn from, old video games, right? As far as like Zelda games and Mario games, there's things you can steal like for dungeon design. I got to I just happened to be hanging out next to Grace World Destroyer and Kelsey Dion when they just did like a impromptu deep dive on what they learned about dungeon design from playing Zelda games. And that's, since I didn't grow up playing Zelda, that's my favorite memory of Zelda right there. Is listening to those two brainstorm dungeon design. That was really cool conversation to be a part of. But
Hey,
yeah,
if you got a table full of Sega kids, steal Zelda. They'll never know. Just run that.
So, Brad, you've never played any Zelda. You've never played Baldur's Gate 3. I truly hope someday you have the time to experience all those great games because, man, like, not just a way to waste time, like a truly beautiful experience. Some of those games are. Anyway, we should probably move on because we still have an action-packed show with a lot to get to, and we're only 36 minutes in. Oh my goodness. Big things happening. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is there is a new Drizzt novel coming out focused on Drizzt's daughter Breezy. I assume that's Caddy Bree, or is Caddy Bree the mom? Is Caddy Bree the daughter's name?
Caddy Bree is Breezy's mom.
Okay, right. Yeah, this one is called The Finest Edge of Twilight. I like this cover a lot. It's very good typography. And I don't know, Brad, you threw this, or somebody else threw this on the agenda. Does anybody else want to talk about this?
I thought Ryan put this one on the agenda.
I did. I've read a lot of the Drizzt books. I'm almost afraid to say that I like the Drizzt books. I haven't read all of them. And that stuff runs deep. But like classic D&D, very fun, like beach read, great characters, deep lore building. It's just good stuff. And if you ever see Ari Salvatore in his like thick Boston blue collar accent talking about the finer literary points of his novels, like, oh, it's just a joy. It just seems like a good dude. It's just like, hey, did you ever wonder why you got that one guy at your table who only tries to make a dual wielding ranger work even though it kind of doesn't? It's because of these books.
Yo.
The thing I like about R.A. Salvatore is I've listened to a lot of interviews with him. Like every time, I used to listen to the official D&D podcast, and every time, he'd put out a new book every 9 months, so they'd have him back on the show. And I really like him because he's not afraid to talk trash about his publisher. He'll, talk trash about the publishing industry and talk about how bad it is. He says things I'm like, damn, man, you're gonna get in trouble. But yeah, I've read, I think, 4. I read Crystal Shard, and I read the new Origin trilogy about him escaping Menzo Branson, and they're better than the Dragonlance books. R.A. Salvatore is a much better writer than Hickman and Weiss. Yeah, it's true. He is. He's a better writer than them.
Say it for the people in the back. RADGAF. Let's go.
And I grew up on those Dragonlance novels, and I cannot disagree with you.
Who would have thought that the most controversial things that we say today were about Sega and Dragonlance? I'm proud of us.
Hickman, Weiss, you want to come on the show and debate us? Let's do it. Yeah, I'll go over the fine points of your novel.
I mean, I loved the Dragonlance novels as a kid, and I've said this on the show before. I do not want to go back and reread them because I don't want to mess up my enjoyment of them. Like, they're in my head, they are perfect because when I was 13 years old, I thought they were perfect. But yeah, I know they weren't, and I just choose to just let my 13-year-old self be happy instead of spoiling it for him.
Yeah. So moving on. Hey, you watching. First of all, thank you for watching. We're glad you're here. And second, are you subscribed? Maybe you think you are, but you might not be. So go down and look, hit that little like button and the little subscribe button, and you should do those things. Now we come to the part of the show we call the catch up. Anything on
We've
Sega
lost
and
a
Dragon Lance?
subscriber.
Anything else from
I
childhood
take full
you wanna destroy?
responsibility.
GoBots are better than Transformers.
Oh,
I don't know why I
What?
said that.
What? I
Not
quit.
re- I don't mean that. That's just Ryan. Oh no, Ryan, quit the show, folks. GoBots were before Transformers. I do know that.
I think
I'll give you
that's
that.
true. Yeah.
Hey, Will, welcome. Yeah, hot takes today. Hot takes today. The other things from your childhood I can ruin. Most of those movies you loved as a kid weren't very good. Most of them were not actually very good. And those TV
And the
shows.
good ones are probably problematic now.
Yeah, all those shows shows and movies you can't wait to introduce your kids. They're not going to watch them because they're going to think they're too problematic, and it's going to break your heart. But that's life. Anyway, so this is the part of the show we call the catch up, where we just say who we are, what we're doing. I'm GM Jim from Wizard Sling, and I want to tell you watching that next week we're going to do the show, and then after the show we're going to be debuting something pretty wild. We're calling it Casual Friday Theater, where what we've done is we've collected about 45 minutes of classic Dungeons and Dragons material, 1980s commercials, news segments, and that kind of stuff, thrown them all into one big movie. We're going to watch it and critique it Mystery Science Theater style next week right after the show. So that will be premiering. You can chat with us and join in the merriment. And that'll be next week after the show. So that's me. What are you guys up to?
Go ahead,
I am
Ryan.
just so irrationally excited about that. I've been looking forward to that for weeks.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Looking forward to all of those. Some of those, I specifically remember seeing on TV as a kid. Like some of those ridiculous things. So they're very nostalgic for me. But then there's some that like I have no idea where that came from. Like I don't remember seeing that at all as a kid. But yeah, those old commercials are great. I'm pumped for that.
And who are you?
Oh yeah, I'm Brad Wolf from Dired Inn.
And who are you?
I'm Ryan Doyle. I lately have been interviewing other cool, awesome TTRPG commentators and creators, and some of those people are international, so I've been starting a lot of the conversations by apologizing for the country I live in. But
Right.
otherwise, it's been great. There's some real bangers coming up. The next few weeks, there's some real good D20 conversations coming up. So stay tuned.
Nice. I got one thing I want to plug. You guys heard of the show Extraction? It's on Fox and Hulu. I love the I love the reality shows that are like social psychology experiments. It's like somebody's collecting data on this. It's one of those shows that they put a bunch of people out in the woods all alone and see how long they can survive out there before getting pulled out. But the twist is the ones who are in charge of pulling them out are their families who are in a bunker like a mile away, and their families compete to send them supplies, and their family members decide when they get pulled out or how long they stay. Full on like unethical psychology experiment from the 1940s kind of stuff, like Stanley Milgram experiment, the Bobo the Clown shocking people kind of stuff. But like you put it on TV, you could do it. And it's fascinating. It's great TV. Anyway, that's called Extraction.
I have seen the trailers for that. Yeah, so now I do know what you're talking about now. I don't think I could handle watching that.
It's great.
I don't know if I'm into the show, but it's such an incredible insight to be like, well, yeah, we're not going to let you do the prison experiment again, but slap a camera in there and make sure there's a pool out back so we get some of that. And yeah, anything goes. Let's go.
As long as everybody signs the consent form.
Right. Exactly. So moving on, try not to get too far off topic. Hot takes and tangents today. That's the show's real topic. So now coming up on the show, we do a part we call Creator Corner. And we are going to talk about just something in the TTRPG industry, and we're going to flesh out, ask for shout outs from chat for ideas and stuff. Today we're talking about NPCs. Like, how do you come up with NPCs with variety? How do you flesh them out and make them feel real?
Yeah, my probably my favorite part of DMing is, and this is my psychological social experiment, is manipulating the NPCs in my game world to see how, you know, if I push this NPC this direction, how do my players respond? I love that part of the collaborative storytelling process. And so just thinking about NPCs and like, you know, like all the different roles that an NPC can play story wise, right? So kind of fleshing out the character from what the players decide to do with that character, right? So I don't, so tell me what you guys think. I typically don't assign a role to my NPCs when I make them. So like I'm not like assigning, okay, this is going to be a mentor character, this is going to be a caretaker character, this is going to be a foil, this is going to be a mirror, right? I don't assign those roles to the NPC when I make them. I kind of like make the NPC based on like their function in the world, right? But then after my players start to interact with the NPC, then I make the decision, oh, they're treating this NPC kind of like a mentor. So then I start to play up the mentor role, right, and how I play that NPC. So it's kind of like, so I decide their role kind of as a reaction to how the players treat them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, with roles, one of the things that the three of us were talking about before we started recording was that in the game Monster of the Week, they call their NPCs bystanders, and they have certain categories for them. And the categories are, I wrote them down: busybody, detective, the gossip, the helper, the innocent, the official, the skeptic, the victim, and the witness. And that in a Monster of the Week story, these are the kind of perfect sort of these are the perfect sort of archetypes to have. Like the skeptic, there's a skeptic in every X-Files episode. Like, that's not aliens. Those cows got eviscerated from natural causes. That definitely didn't. There's no aliens. That guy's in every X-Files episode, right? And the idea being that you can take these archetypes if you want and say, I want to have a skeptic in my story. Like, there's no dragon in the hills. Those cows died of natural cause. You see the same exact plot point works in a D&D story, right, as from the X-Files. Brad's saying he doesn't do that. And I think I think when I build NPCs, I just start from I have building blocks that goes like the main categories are a name and a description, and then a quirk. These are like levels how deep I go: name, description, and a quirk. And then if it's an NPC the party's going to spend time with, they give a desire, a secret, and an attitude. Attitude I'd probably put higher. The secret would probably be last. Like the description in the name, every NPC needs some kind of description, a quirk, something that makes them memorable. Like this NPC is a funny hat. That's enough. A funny hat's enough to make an NPC memorable. But then I think really the core of like, and I agree with Brad, you don't necessarily want to start with archetypes, but every NPC should want something.
Mm-hmm.
And what they want may lead them to become the mentor. If what that NPC wants is to restore peace in the valley, and that NPC thinks that the party is the best way to get that done, then they could become a mentor to that party. And so I said, desire, attitude, and secret. And then the attitude is how they feel about members of the party. I think it's a good thing to keep track of. And then the secret, if it gets the relationship gets that deep with the NPC, I like to give most NPCs a secret. Not always that they're going to betray the party, but I like to give NPCs something like they display a weird behavior and you think it's because of this, but then the secret is you find out that the behavior is actually because of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tried and true fiction twist I do in basically every novel. It's like you think this person is this way, but then you find out, oh, this is why they're that way, and that's the twist. Then you don't have to betray anybody or do stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that. The like when I make my NPCs, it's just three things typically. It's want, need, and quirk. Like you said, like Nacho says that in the chat too. Like the quirk makes them memorable, right? It's the dwarf that for some strange reason has like neon green hair, or the bugbear with an eye patch. Whatever it is, right? There's something different that stands out, right? That makes them memorable. But then I do want and need, and I make those two completely different things, right? So, and that conflict between what they want, right, the thing that they on the surface desire versus their underlying need, that can lead to that plot twist that Jim was just talking about, right? So, and I don't necessarily figure all that out ahead of time. I just like this person wants to be the best blacksmith in the world, right? But what they really need, right, is they need a found family, right? They need a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. So they're placating that need by trying to be the best blacksmith. And then depending on how the players interact with him, that can, it could just be they buy some shit off of him and they're done, and that character just fades into, the background. Or if they really interact with him, then that's when I can kind of decide that what role is this character going to play in the player character's story, right? Are they going to be, that rival kind of conflict, either a mirror or foil kind of character, or are they going to be that mentor or best friend kind of character, right? You can kind of figure that out after the player characters interact with your NPC, if all that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about, I saw this panel once from some conference of a bunch of famous dungeon masters, and the panel question was something about improv, and they were like, I do blah 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 for improv, and then one of the people on stage said, I don't like the idea of improv. The idea of improv, the word terrifies me. And then this person said, but the way I run my games is I don't improv. I focus on what my NPCs want, because if I don't know what's supposed to happen next, I just return to what that NPC wants, right? And that's because that gives you something to focus on. Like if you ever watch people improv and you watch people struggle, what do? They go back to what they know. Like if you watch somebody do improv and they know like two details about a character, and then they don't know they just go back to they repeat the details about the character that they know. I don't know. I study improv. I find this stuff fascinating.
Well, and that goes back to like the old scorpion and the frog story, right? You guys are familiar with that? Like why did you sting me? Well, because it's in my nature. I'm a scorpion. That's what I do, right? And if you can construct an NPC in that way, right, where like the players know this NPC's nature is to be this kind of underhanded, selfish character, but over time they build a rapport. They feel like they've won this guy over. When that NPC finally double crosses them, right, to become one of the villains, like you telegraph that enough from the beginning, right? So that twist doesn't feel like you're just pulling it out of left field, right? And those are the things, like, I'm not great at doing that, but when I pull that kind of thing off, it feels awesome, But
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I've adapted a more reactive approach because I do focus on like, here's the one memorable detail. Here's the quirk. Here's the thing that's you're going to remember when you forget their stupid name that I made up. And I've found over time, I'm actually pretty bad, probabilistically, at knowing how the players are going to respond to that weird quirk and interpret it. And once in a while, I will use that to my advantage because I have a good idea of like the function and the backstory of this NPC. But sometimes I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, he's clearly a double agent jerk for the bad guy. Like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I just did to convince you of that, but now I'm rolling with it. So yeah, I do a very reactive NPC management behind the scenes, and have like the plot hooks and the secrets like just like ready to be fungible, to like, okay, this is the person you trusted, this is the weird goblin that you adopted as a pet for reasons that are obscure to me. Cool. They're the ones now who are going to perform the functions of the person whose voice I've been practicing for 45 minutes in the shower before the session, who I really thought was going to drive this thing forward, who you decided sucks. I don't know why. So sure, yeah, all of those details now they're over here. That goblin knows why the werewolves are plotting to take over the village. I don't know why. I'll figure it out next session.
Yeah, so I just started a new adventure, and I'm running it in the same persistent world as our last adventure. So I pulled four NPCs from the last adventure, and those four NPCs have come together to start a guild. And so that's the starting point for the new adventure, is all their new characters are like the young members of this newly formed adventuring guild. And so the players already know these four NPCs because they are the ones that stood out the most from the last adventure, right? But their characters don't know these NPCs yet. And so I'm just kind of toying around with it, like, here are these NPCs. What are they going to turn into based on how you guys interact with them? Could one become a villain? Could one become, what? Who knows? We'll find out. But that keeps the game interesting for me because I have no idea how this story is going to end.
Yeah, and I put this comment up here before. Or no, maybe it was this one. Yeah, you don't want to go deep on every NPC. Not every NPC needs a traumatic backstory and a lifelong ambition. And like the things like the secret, that's definitely for NPCs that the party is spending time with. You don't need to give the clerk at the county fair a deep backstory if the party just talks to her once. They don't need to know that she secretly is like a worshiper of Baal at home and has a temple under her basement. That's probably not important unless, and don't give that to that clerk at the county fair. Hold that and give it to somebody else that the party interacts with.
And sometimes that could be magical. Sometimes it does end up that like, oh, it makes way more sense that that's going on in this NPC's basement based on what's happened inside the game as it's progressed over the last few sessions. Circling back, in one of my home games right now, we're in the persistent world that we were in years ago, and the players didn't know that at first. And they met an NPC, and she talks about her grandma, and then she talks about her other grandma, and they're like, "Wait a minute, wait," and then they like start out like, "Oh, who's your grandma?" That's, "Oh, she taught me how to make potions or whatever." And like, "Oh, we're this NPC has shown us like now all of a sudden she's unlocked the entire map. We were here 100 years ago, and that passage of time has clearly happened because like, oh, okay, that was 2 generations ago. We were interacting with this cast of characters, so like, let's see what this world looks like now, and we have all of these assumptions baked in, and capitalizing on that again because I'm pretty bad at predicting how my players are going to react to any given NPC. That makes it a little more certain. Also, take an NPC, leave an NPC. I stole this actually from the Glass Cannon podcast, but in every town, behind the bar in one of the taverns is an exposition. The granddaddy of them all is Johnny Exposition, Jimothy Exposition, Timothy Exposition. There's always one guy who's like, if you talk to the bartender, like you're gonna get lured drops. Like I'm gonna be transparent about that. Here you go, and whatever. He's got the transatlantic 1940s newsreel voice. I can do that all night, and it's just yeah. Here's your info dump. This guy knows everything. There's always an exposition. You can
Out on the frontier, hobgoblin attacks.
Mm-hmm. Good times.
So are we done talking about NPCs? We're ready to move on.
Yeah.
Still a lot coming up on the show. Don't tune out yet, because I'm about to let you know that finally finally, you can play a teddy bear in Dungeons and Dragons now. What? Yes, it's true. You can play a cuddly teddy bear with a sword and a flaming demonic shield if you like. You can be this guy. This is from Mage Hand Press, Valdis Spire of Secrets, the player pack, which has some subclasses, species, feats, and spells. Yeah, I don't know really much more about this other than I really liked this image and I wanted to make sure that it got on the show. Do you guys know anything about Valda's Spire? I also just kind of like the idea of like, oh, finally I can play a teddy bear. Like I never could do this before.
Yeah, I bought it and downloaded it. It's
Oh yeah?
yeah, there's a muscle wizard, which is a barbarian subclass. So it's kind of like the barbarian's answer to the Eldritch Knight, right? So you can play a muscle wizard. There's a rogue. What is it called? The arachnoid something, but it's basically Spider-Man. It turns your rogue into Spider-Man. So there's some pretty creative subclasses in this. It was a fun. Well, I can't say it was a fun read because I skimmed it real quick, but I haven't taken the time to really dive into to see how well balanced these subclasses are. But they look like some fun subclasses you could use.
So 2 questions. One, can the barbarian wizard cast spells while they're raging? And 2, is Spider-Man a rogue? Let's discuss that real quick.
Yes.
He's got a roguish personality.
Oops.
Yeah, I mean,
I think game mechanics wise, it makes sense to use the rogue chassis to build Spider-Man on because of all the bonus action maneuvers you can do.
Well, he's clearly a Dex character.
Right. But the fact that the rogue allows you to do all these, use your bonus action to do all these extra maneuvers, that I think is probably the easiest way to build Spider-Man, even if Spider-Man probably doesn't have lockpick proficiency or pickpocket skills, right?
I feel like I might say monk.
Because of all the punchiness.
it's not bad. I mean, like mobility, right? It's monk or rogue. I think are the answers. Dex base. He's definitely got all right, slippers of spider climb and I don't know, some homebrew gloves that you can cast web almost as a cantrip, right?
Yep. Well, and that the subclass does let you do that. It gives you the web spell that you can just cast. Yeah, you have to be. I don't think you get it to 13th level. You're not gonna feel full on grown up Peter Parker Spider-Man until you hit about 13th level. But it takes you a while to get all that stuff. But once you do, from looking at it on paper, this was the one subclass I paid the most attention to. Looking at it on paper, I think they do a pretty good job of making it feel like you're playing Spider-Man if you're playing a high enough level version of this subclass.
But I'm curious to see how that barbarian works with magic because usually you don't see barbarians multi-class with casters or take levels of casting classes.
I just want to point out, if you saw that teddy bear picture and you're like, oh, that's cute and funny, and I would never play that, there are, I want to say, puppets in Pathfinder. There are dolls that have souls shoved into them by some eldritch means, and they are the creepiest, scariest, a character that would face off against a, gargantuan dragon is going to have a problem with these little 3-foot dolls staggering towards them, way scarier, at least where I'm coming from. So don't sleep on that.
There's a lot of that in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. There were a couple of scary doll encounters I remember running in that game. Any more thoughts on teddy bears in D&D? We're ready to move on.
I was pulling up this player pack. You guys keep talking. I was looking up the muscle wizard to see how this works.
So moving on to the next thing that has nothing to do with teddy bears, unfortunately, this is this is almost sort of old news by now because it happened like 4 days ago, and the world moves fast. But so apparently there was Stardew Valley as a video game. It's a video game, and somebody made a mod for it that used Baldur's Gate likenesses of characters from Baldur's Gate. As you can see there, there's Astarion in its pixelated glory. And apparently, when the people who made this mod put it out, Sven from Larian, who made Baldur's Gate 3, gave the post a like or something. So he gave tacit approval to it. He didn't get upset. At least he, gave it a like. But then apparently WotC initially issued a takedown, a DMCA against this mod. And then about 2 days later, they said, "Ooh, that was a mistake. We didn't mean to do that. It was a clerical error, whatever," which is probably a lie. Probably what happened is they issued the takedown, and then after the backlash, someone from a different department said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! It's not that big a deal. It's not worth it. Undo it." And here's the thing. I think this is good news.
Oh,
I think it's good news because they so quickly recanted. They so quickly changed course. It only took them 2 days. I think this is this is a step in the right direction. This is like, I'm so proud of Bobby. He hasn't had a drink in 36 hours. He's doing so great. I feel like
hey, Bobby.
Because what we've seen, I think what happened here is probably the same thing that kind of happened in the Pinkerton situation, which is one area of the company is in charge of this. It is not talking to the area of the company that's in charge of PR, discipline, PR, or like, public relations and legal DMCAs and that kind of stuff. Those people aren't eating lunch in the caf with the PR people, so they don't know what's going on. That's what happened then. I think that's what happened now, but I think they're getting better at knowing when these screw ups happen. But that's my positive spin on it. What do you guys think?
I think that's the best possible take you could have on this.
We need a Sideshow Bob GIF ready to go. Every week, I just doing nothing is better than what they did. Just clip that. I don't have to come next week. Just play that again.
Yeah, we need to take that out and just click play on Ryan saying that every time we have WotC news.
Well, here's the thing, Nacho, about they have a PR company who does PR for them. And that really seems like the problem is that whoever is making these decisions is in a different building somewhere, and they're not able to really talk to the people.
Like there's like a legal team that's like, "Ooh, we better do something about that," and the PR folks
Right.
are, "Wait, what? You did what? No, you can't do that. It's too late. We already did it."
Yeah.
It's a relatively new person, and the name escapes me, so I apologize. But there is a community liaison. I don't know what the proper title is, but there is someone who clearly understands the community and what's good for the business, and they will pop up on like the D&D Beyond forum or something to explain some sort of WotC decision or speak up upon some the OGL recently. They spoke up about like, it's supposed to be weeks after the Monster Manual. Yes, it's going to be in the Creative Commons. We want to make sure it's good and right and proper before, honestly, I bet before they release it and never can take it back again. But there's one person who's like way too far down the chain, in my opinion. And this is like every corporate structure, right? But like the people on the ground who know what's going on and the people upstairs who are doing crazy crap like this are on different floors, if not completely different buildings.
Right. If you've never worked at a big company, you might not know the bureaucratic red tape. I worked at a company for a long time, and it was on my first day there were 50 people there. My last day there were 3,000. And over the course, I got to see what it was like to work from in the beginning, I worked in tech support, and if a customer called about a bug, I would get off the phone, I would walk across the building over to the devs and be like, "Hey, Akira, could you work on this? The customer just called about this bug. Can you fix it?" and then they would fix it, and that's how it worked. But then the company gets bigger and bigger. You can't just go over and talk to the devs. Their time is busy, so you have to fill out a form to get dev time, and then that form has to be approved by somebody, and you have to add in these steps because eventually they were like, we can't have people coming over and taking our devs time. These people make 5 times your salary.
Did you open
We
a
can't
ticket?
waste their time. Yeah, you gotta open a ticket.
Yeah.
This is just how, and like WotC is a big, Hasbro especially is a big company, so their people are busy filling out forms and putting in tickets and filing TPS reports. And the bigger the company, the less work gets done, and that's why one reason companies chew up so much money is because they need 3 times the people to do the work because of all the bureaucracy. Yes, submit a ticket, and we'll get to it when we can.
Oh, yeah. It's craziness. All right, so you want the scoop on the Muscle Wizard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us.
Okay, so apparently the Muscle Wizard is just a delusional barbarian who thinks he's a wizard. So
I love it. Oh,
Interesting.
perfect.
So all of their cantrips and spells, which are in quotes, right? So at 3rd level you get ability called cantrips, but cantrips is in quotes. And at 6th level you get spells, but spells is in quotes. And they're basically like unarmed attacks. Like you get Mage Hand as a cantrip, which is basically just a shove. So you're just like, my Mage Hand. And then like one of your spells is Magic Missile, which is just you throwing a bunch of daggers. So it's so it's very tongue in cheek. Yeah. So the Muscle Wizard is just a barbarian who thinks he's using spells. His 14th level ability is called I Cast Fist.
This is.
Hey, somebody tell Mike. I know someone who would love that.
I might buy this thing. This sounds very interesting with the Spider-Man rogue. I might actually. Been a while since I spent some money on a WotC product that wasn't a core book.
It's been a while since I've done a dive onto a Mage Hand Press product, but like, I hold them in high regard. Like, they do good work. I haven't seen anything new from them for a while, and that might be my mistake, not theirs. But yeah, I like what they do in general.
The monk is basically a street fighter. It's called the Warrior of the Street.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you get Street Fighter, you get Spider-Man, you get Muscle Wizard, and you get the Teddy Bear. It's some fun stuff in here.
Will, to your comment, I played a Warlock in a campaign once, and my Warlock got a staff of the Mage, the really high level one, decided that he was a wizard and started wearing a fake beard and tried to infiltrate a wizard college in Waterdeep. And I eventually got found out, and I had to flee the college. But I broke a bunch of. I used my staff to break all their trophy cases on the way out. That was a very fun, 2 months of all the other players, PCs were like, he thinks he's a wizard now. What do you mean? I am a wizard. Have you seen my staff? That was very fun.
Yeah. Sorcerer do this.
The Warlock in this pack, this player pack is your future self. So it's the Warlock Future You Patron. So there's some really clever subclasses in this thing. It's kind of neat.
I like that from Mage Hand Press. What was it? One more time, what was it called?
Valda's Spire of Secrets.
Valda's Spire of Secrets players pack. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, so we're running a little low on time. We can either do our roundtable discussion or we could stop by Jim's Corner because I think we might have some discussion about Jim's Corner. So, what do you want to do? Roundtable or the corner?
It's so hard for me to say no to Jim's Corner. As long as you pop the graphic, I vote Jim's Corner.
Oh man, I wasn't ready.
And we did change the thumbnail to the Chris Perkins retires thumbnail.
That's right. So we don't technically have to do our round. We could save that roundtable discussion.
Yeah.
I got 45 minutes on just that guy from the thumbnail, so yeah, we should.
Matthew Lesko, yeah, burned into my brain. He was on at 2 a.m. a lot on the weekends when I was a teenager after Star Trek. Okay, so
Buy my book. Sorry.
You could get free money from the government. That's that guy. He'd be out in the park, screaming before influencers. Now nobody thinks that's weird if you're wearing a question mark jacket screaming at a camera in the park. Nobody would think that was weird. Be like, well, I guess just making content.
He was
Yeah,
a true
yeah.
trailblazer for us all.
I saw two very well dressed women walking down the sidewalk in my neighborhood with a selfie stick today. I'm like, oh, that's not weird. They're making content.
If I highly recommend, there's an Instagram account called Influencers in the Wild, which is shots of people influencing, like shots of people standing in the middle of the street with a camera and a ring light. Anyway, let's get on. Actually, let's stop by Jim's Corner. We're taking too long to get there.
We are super casual today.
So here's the thing. I've talked before about the Not Another D&D podcast. Well, they put out regular miscellaneous episodes, and the episode they put out this morning was called, they do a recurring series called, sorry, Mike, we will get to the 2024 DMG Chapter 2 next week, we promise. Absolutely promise. So on NADPOD today, they're doing Turtle Tank, which is their version of Shark Tank, where they have patrons submit homebrew ideas, and then they kind of debate them and talk about how many of their turtle eggs they would give, to own a percentage of the idea. Anyway, somebody submitted an idea, and I thought it was pretty interesting, but I think we could bounce it around and improve on this a little bit. The person who submitted the idea was that it's a potion that when you drink it, it instantly restores you to full health, but if you drop down to 0 hit points, you instantly die, no death saves. But here's the thing, of where I think we could have some debate on this and workshop it a little bit, is that condition of dying at 0 hit points goes away when you long rest. So if you were to drink this late in the adventuring day, there's very little consequence to it, right? If you drink this early in the adventuring day, that's a big deal, because then all day long you're super vulnerable. So I thought, what about instead of drop to 0 hit points, you die, that the consequence is when you drink this potion, you get 2 failed death saves that you just have to carry around with you, and when you long rest, you can remove 1. So it puts you at 2 death saves. You long rest twice to get rid of those. What do you think about that? Or maybe since that's not as severe a consequence as dying immediately, because you still get death saves, maybe it doesn't restore you to full HP. Maybe it's like half your HP as temp hit points or something. Those are my ideas. What do you guys think?
I think it sounds fun. I like the kind of like gambling aspect. I mean, I definitely have a couple players that would be all in on, some mechanic like that, where like, oh, I get this really great bonus, but it's a bigger risk at the end. I have at least 2 players that would totally bite on that. They would be all about it.
Death saves, that's a problem for future me to solve.
Yep. Yeah.
I love a good cost benefit mechanic where the player is making a choice. Maybe it's the gambler in me. I was playing poker in the 90s, not second edition, but it made me think of 2 things right out of the gate. Pathfinder 2E has, and I forget what it's called because there's too many systems rattling around in the old duder's brain these days, but they have persistent death saves essentially. Like you come back from 0, your death save is now filled in. Boom. So I do like the idea of like that carrying over. The next time you drop to 0, now you only got a couple fails to death. In Mothership, the healing potions are like stim packs. You get health back, but there's a chance you die. Your like heart explodes, right? It's like a volatile chemical you're pumping into your veins, and the more you take them, kind of like death saves, like the second one you take is more likely to blow up on you and end your adventuring career. So I love stuff like that. So here's a long rest in a bottle. Oh, there's got to be you roll a 1, and that's the last long rest you ever take.
Yep. Yeah, I could totally see like coming up with some really cool, magic items, one-off magic items that could have some like really volatile shenanigans to them. That would be a lot of fun.
What about something? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
I also think, like, expanding this idea to other systems. You brought up Mothership, like Tales from Elsewhere, Peter's game, right? His game doesn't have hit points. It has like various conditions. So if you had a game like that where you have these different conditions, you could have like different tonics or whatever potions that they remove two conditions, but they give you a different one, right? You could have like almost a whole mini game of these like strange tonics that you can mix and match, like some weird potion magic that you're tinkering with the various like dangerous conditions in the game, like Tales from Elsewhere. That could be really fun.
What about?
Especially
I
in
was
that
just
like
thinking.
clockwork.
What about a rod or a staff of healing that you can use it to cast mass cure wounds or mass healing word or something, but a more powerful version, like it's like 1d10 healing or something. But when you cast it, the person who receives the healing has to roll, and if they roll poorly, instead of receiving the healing, they receive a one ongoing death save. It's like it's the heal or curse rod, and it's got great healing. Like like it does 1d12 plus 5 or something like that for one charge, but it could also give you a death save.
Yeah, they
Something
call
like
it
that
the
changes the dynamic because you're more likely to gamble with another player's character than your own. So you might see something like that get used more.
Bob, here custom healing. No, 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 no.
I'm fine. I'm okay.
yeah, like call it something like the rod of light and shadow, right? Like you got like a one in six chance that you hit them with shadow, and a 5 out of 6 chance that you hit them with light, and they get healed with the light, and you know they have this necromantic effect when you hit them with shadow, so they lose a death save.
Interesting. So, yeah, we just came up with a new magic item. So look for that on our website soon. We don't have a website.
Rod of
Rod of
save
save
or
or
die.
die. That's pretty good.
I bathe you in the light of the heal. Oh, I'm sorry. You were supposed to close your eyes. You're blind now for the next 6 turns. I do like going back to Tales from Elsewhere. Shout out to Peter. At least the Clock World, like the Weird West setting, or any sort of like Call of Cthulhu-y, that era where like here, this medicine is made of mostly cocaine and caffeine. It's just like, okay, this heals you because you can't feel anything anymore. There's some downside to not being able to feel your legs. They don't hurt,
Yeah.
sure, but like, yeah, now you're more likely to fail a deck save or some like cost benefit to that.
Or you get addicted to the healing.
Oh yes.
I just need one healing charge. You're at full hit points. Come on, man. Just one charge.
Just a little taste.
Oh, all right. So now that's it. We've got to design a game where there's no cleric, right? A fantasy game. There's no cleric class. We replace the cleric class with a zany alchemist class. So like the only healing in the game are these like all these weird ideas we've just been kicking out. It's like take clerics out of the game and like just replace them with weirdo alchemy.
Right. The healing potions are plentiful here, but you get what you pay for, and sometimes you don't get what you pay for.
Bobby's Discount Healing Potions Emporium.
Yeah.
It's called Dark Sun. Well,
It's
maybe
called
we
Dark
just
Sun.
reinvented Dark Sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that
that's
happens
fair.
like once a month in this space, where it's just like, oh, did we just invent Dark Sun?
Clearly, the community is missing some Dark Sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Probably never happen though.
Nope.
Probably not going to happen for 5th edition. All right, so I think we've come to the natural conclusion of our show, and that is we've run out of topics or topics that we have time to talk about. And I'm sorry. We'll try to do better next week, but we probably won't. And get off our backs. Like, what's the big deal? Why are you making such a big deal out of this? We're just trying to have a show here. God. All right.
Personally, I cannot. This was my best. I can't do better. I left it all on the field today, guys.
The name on the tin is casual. We're not promising a whole lot here.
Yeah, if you came here for like high budget graphics and sound effects and stuff, then you did not read the name. Anyway,
Shut
so
your mouth, sir. This is gold. There's never been anything like it.
anyway, all right, so we're gonna sign out here. Hey, I am GM Jim from Wizards and Wordslingers, and this guy is.
I'm Brad Wolf from Dyerden.
I'm Ryan Doyle, and I'm not sorry.
And I'm not sorry either. You know what the hell. So we'll see you next week. And remember, after the next show next week, Casual Friday Theater. Don't miss it. See you soon.